Let's check maybe what's up this road. This is not on the map. So. Hello adventurers. So a couple of weeks ago, Graham from Great Off-Road Adventures made some videos on his GPS setups and what he thought was good and bad about each one, and I'll leave a link down below for that. But it inspired me to make a video about my setups. My setups are more homebrew. I've made them myself out of bits and pieces lying around, tablets, RAM mounts, using Aussie Explorer for Android software and Hema maps. And I've made two of them. One's a more ruggedized version for the motorbike here. It's dustproof, waterproof, vibration proof, and the other one's for the car, which is based on a Samsung tablet, which just has a bigger and better touchscreen. So I'm going to show you what I've done, give you a run through of them, and give you a run through of how I set them up and get my maps from the computer to the devices. So let's get on with it. So this is the tablet, or the GPS that I've made for the motorbike. This is based on a ruggedized tablet, Android tablet. It's shockproof, waterproof, dustproof, all those sorts of things. One of the differences with this tablet than a lot of tablets is a 5-volt power supply. It doesn't use USB. It uses a sort of barrel power plug, which is good because the USB plugs on a bike like this tend to vibrate apart. So I've done about 20,000 Ks all through the middle of Australia and all through the desert and corrugated roads and gravel roads with this, and it's not missed a beat. And on the back, it's got a 12-volt to 5-volt power supply to supply it. So that actually come with the unit. I just had to shorten it and change the cables. I use these molded connectors on this bike that push together, and the main reason I use those over cigarette lighter plugs or anything like that is because vibration. Anything that just uses sort of friction, like a cigarette lighter plug to keep it together, always vibrates out. Well, once these are plugged together, they don't vibrate out, and they're also simple. If any of these fail, I can just cut the wires and twitch it together. And on this one, just because I have gloves that you can touch the screen with, but as a backup, I just have a pen stuck on the side of it with Velcro. Also mount it with RAM mounts. I think they're 1.25" RAM mounts, and I've got a couple there just depending on where I've got this bag, so I can position this. I usually run it out the way of the speedo and the dash, but sometimes when this is extended right up, I've got to be able to have a good amount of movement to position this, so I run a couple of RAM mounts, and they're 1.25", and they are rock solid, mounted directly onto the handlebars. So that's the bike GPS. We'll start it up and I'll show you what it looks like. So once it starts up, you end up with this screen, and you just drag that to there, and it's basically a standard Android tablet. Down here, some apps that I use, file managers and different things, but I use Aussie Explorer, and that is that icon there, and you just press the icon and it'll start up, and then it loads up the maps that I've got in here. And in here I've got the 150 Hema, and a bunch of other Hema maps that I own, and I also stick in just homemade maps. Some that I've made out of Google Earth, some that I've just found or been given. So you can just pretty well scroll around, zoom in, zoom out, different screens, so you can have odometers and different things on the screen depending on what layout you want. Waypoint navigation. All sorts of different screens. I normally just run at the main screen, and then in here's the whole bunch of setup stuff that you can do, whether you want tracks to show, not to show, that sort of thing. And that's what I pretty well run with. So interesting thing about this is it's quite big, but when something goes wrong with a group and you get lost, they always come to this GPS because you can pretty well see all the roads and where you are. It's very easy to use. You can pinch and zoom as well, so very good. Also have a bunch of different maps in there at different levels. So there's a 250K map. There's, what's this one? That's 150 where it was. This is the West Australian map. This is the Australian map right the way across. There's some waypoints I've actually got in there. And so yeah, you can have all sorts of different waypoints. That's the Midwest or West Australia. So yeah, you can, and I've got the desert maps in here. So all the Hema maps are in there. So very good system, very reliable, and has gone a lot of places with me, that GPS. I also take it off at times and just take it off and use it as my, at night time to see where I'm going to go the next day as my tablet and sort of plan my next day's adventure just using this tablet. So let's go and take a look at the one in the car. So here we are in the car. This is the Samsung tablet, as I said earlier, Tab E I think it's called, and got the standard apps. I also have Google Earth and Google Maps on here, which there's another video and I'll link that down below that shows you how to use those. But we're interested in the Aussie Explorer for Android. So when you start it up, you can see this is the 150 K map, and if you you can cycle through different maps just by pressing the buttons. There's a whole, that's the 250, there's a whole bunch of them in here, and also some of my own that I've geo-referenced myself. And that's basically works the same as the other ones, so it's just bigger. Bigger, easy to use, better touch screen. This one uses USB power, and I have a USB-C. I just have my cigarette lighter plugs down here, and there's a USB-C to cigarette lighter adapter, and that just powers that, and that stays in here the whole time. This is mounted to the window, again with RAM mounts. We'll just go and take a look at that. So here it is through the window. You can see the RAM mounts, and that's a 4-inch suction cup from Power Grip in the US, I believe. Just some of the bits and pieces I had lying around to get that mounted, and that stays in there permanently, and stays stuck to the window for months and months, probably over a year now that's been stuck there. So works very well. Okay, let's go inside and show you the rest of the system. To get this off, you just have to undo the power and undo the RAM mount, and this will come straight off. So to get this one out of the car, it's pretty easy. You just pull out the power, and it's just got some dual lock on the back, and I just pull the dual lock and it should come off. And there you go. Okay, we're inside and I've got the GPSs here. We'll go through how I've put those together. We're going to go through how I get the data on and off the computer, on and off the GPS, and how I do my research and create my tracks on the computer. So as I said, outside I've made these out of bits and pieces that I had lying around. For example, like there's one of the suction caps, if that'll focus. That's very high quality suction cap. RAM mounts that I had lying around, if that'll focus again. Get it behind my face maybe. There we go. These are 1.25 inches, I think, so they take a lot of weight. And then everything is like stuck on the back of there. So that shows how I just use Velcro or double-sided tape and put the RAM mount on the back of the GPS. And on this one here, the RAM mount's still in the car. I've just got the double-sided tape on the back. And here is a older one. This is a Windows-based one that I used to run Aussie Explorer on, and that's just got the RAM mount, if I can get that to focus, on the back as well. There we go. Just double-sided taped. This is a pretty heavy sort of unit, so, and it's got a lot of bezel, so I sort of put it aside for these cheaper ones. So these here, I didn't know how reliable these would be, so I've actually managed to acquire a few more, so I'll just go and grab them. And there you go, there's two other ones. One I've got set up ready to go as a backup straight away with a RAM mount on, and one that is just a clean tablet that I think it's ready to go as software, but it's I need to add a RAM mount to it when that time comes. And so they're just waiting for this one here to wear out, but as you can see, it's pretty dirty, a little bit beat up because it's on the bike, and it's but it's just never died. So okay, let's move to the computer and how I set up my tracks and waypoints, and then how I get them onto the GPS. Yep, let's go. So I use Aussie Explorer on Windows when I set up my waypoints and my data and get it ready to transfer to the GPS. I do that in an emulator on the Mac, which I'll show you now, but run Windows 7 at the moment. It's just what I had in an emulator, and the only thing it really does is run Aussie Explorer. So let's go and take a look. So I can open up the emulator here, and as you can see, it's Windows, and down here I have Aussie Explorer. So I just double click on that and that will open up. And it gives you an idea of where you are, little square there. So let's click somewhere over here in WA, and you can get rid of that. So you can run all sorts of maps. As you can see here, I've got all of the Australian and West Australian maps, so you can actually go into more detail, and you can just sort of scan around, drag and drop with the mouse. I have from my HN7 the 150k maps that Hema brought out. So this is the 150k. This is not the most detailed I've got some other detailed maps, but this is the most detailed overall map that I have. I also can set up some Google Earth maps and geo-reference them. I don't have any set up now, but yeah, you can pretty well get a aerial photo and geo-reference that. It's really good for going to the beach and looking for beach tracks. I do that a lot, and then you don't need to worry about internet access when you're away. If I want to load up a waypoint, I can just go into here and I'll load up, for instance, the Kennedy Range, and you can see there's some waypoints on the way up there. And if I come up to here, there is the Kennedy Range. I can then, if I just zoom into the Kennedy Range, I should be able to, I think I still have the track. So if I go load track from file, I should be able to find the Kennedy Range in here. Where is it? I just saw it. Kennedy Range, Gascoyne driven. So this is the track that I drove, and you can see there the blue. If I just go in here, you can see that there it is there. I drove out here from the junction and went over the top through Sandyman Station and back. And so that's how I set up my waypoints. And because the maps, because the GPS uses the exact same software, Aussie Explorer, I can just transfer that directly onto an SD card or email it directly to the tablet and just import it and export it and import it directly back into here. So everything is 100% compatible. I'm not really a fan of this idea that everything's up to the cloud, and that's all great, but when you're out in the bush, I can do this anywhere. I don't need coverage. I have full control over this. I'm not relying on someone else's cloud, someone else's server. You log in and your waypoints are not there, or whatever goes on. This is fully independent of the internet, of connectivity, and I can do this anywhere, connection or no connection. So that's the advantage, I believe, of this system. So that all runs in an emulator. To get these waypoints, like everybody, I use Google Earth and other mapping software like Apple Maps. Interesting thing I find, I'll show you, Apple Maps, I picked this out. this here is just a mine site in Google Earth. And if you have a look at Apple Maps, the resolution of Apple Maps is by far better than Google Earth in nearly all circumstances. So I use Apple Maps for the imagery just about all the time. When you want to start doing lat longs and bring in lat longs and that sort of stuff, Google Earth is a lot better, but for the straight out imagery, Apple Maps is by far better. So I use sort of both of them, but one is better than the other, especially if you're just looking for visual points. Definitely use Apple Maps. And then I look for points of interest or import other people's maps. And if you have a look here, I have over here on the left all of my previous trips and waypoints. So I can go to Stockyard Gully, for example, Stockyard Gully Caves. I can go to the cave track, and you'll see it fly over there. And there is my track and all the waypoints for where I went into the Stockyard Gully Caves, which are in here. Went and had a look at different bits and pieces, and then made my way on the sand track north, and kept on heading north. So, and then I can export these and import them into Aussie Explorer in the emulator, and then I can have a look and see where they're at, and then I can put them onto an SD card or email them to my devices, and that's how I get my tracks from my computer into the devices. Pretty simple. It's these cloud ideas work really well when they work. I like this. I've got full control, and I can work with any file format anyone gives me, and I can convert it and get it into my system. I'm not tied into someone else's rules and someone else's system. So that's why I really like the way that I've done it. I like building my own stuff. I like knowing how it works and knowing how to fix it when I'm on the tracks. So that's why I do a lot of my own work, whether it be GPSs, communications, pieces on the car. So anyway, that's just a quick rundown of my GPSs. Again, have a look at Graham from Great Off-Road Adventures. His YouTube clip on the commercially available systems was really good, so it's worth having a look at. So I'll link that down below, as I said earlier, and go take a look. So hope everyone's doing okay in these lockdown situations and these under these restrictions, and we're all looking forward for sure to getting out and about when that is possible. So till the next one, I'll catch you later.